Hello, guys. Welcome back to Raising Hell to Heaven. Sadly, Kate is not with us today because her puppy went to heaven. But we have special guest Brad Ledford. I'm so excited to get into this pod today. I've been on one all week. I'm actually writing a song about it. About how exciting it is that I feel like Jesus is just spreading through social media. And, I found you scrolling. I'm like, there's all these Christians on here. This is so cool. So I would love to hear, about your story. You're Cali, right? In between Nashville. Just fill me in a little bit about your story and your story with your walk, but also what do you do? What's your, because I know you're back and forth and you have a horse named Gus. I had a rat named Gus. Funny story.
You had a rat named Gus?
I had a rat named Gus. I had two. Like a pet rat.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
When I was little, my mom probably loved that. I came home, I was like, surprise! I brought two rats.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, that's cool. Yeah. So I live in California. I'm in Nashville a lot. I was spending about half the month there, half the month here, kind of back and forth stuff for business stuff. And then lately I've been here just because we've been doing a lot more rodeo training and my horse Gus is here. So I spend way more of my time here now.
Okay.
So that's kind of why I've been more in California. But yeah, I run a beverage company that I started out of college with one of my best friends. And I also operate two ranches with a few other cowboys. And that's all here in California. And then back home, I grew up on a horse farm. So that's kind of like my roots are agriculture stuff. But then I got into this beverage company and whatnot. And my background in education wise is in biochemistry. So I'm all over the map, honestly, with I guess my background and stuff. But yeah, I guess to give you a little bit about me, from North Carolina originally, grew up as a Christian and really developed my faith early on. I think I became a Christian when I was genuinely when I was end of sophomore year in college. I went on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic and it completely changed my life.
Yeah.
Entirely, honestly. It was crazy just seeing people that had nothing and being so joyful and everything just because they had Jesus, with them. And yeah, totally rocked my world. I came back from that a completely different person. And it just, changed everything for me. I went back to the Dominican Republic, I think 4 times after that over the next 2 years, just doing a lot more mission work. Went to Uganda, did mission work over there, played football in college. So after all that, I went off to college, played football. I went to Liberty University in Virginia. And then I went to a school in California called Chapman, smaller school.
It's one of the only ones I didn't get into.
Really?
Yeah, because they have a gnarly theater department.
Totally. Yeah.
How cool. Beautiful over there. It's in Orange County, yeah? I believe.
Yeah, Orange County. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a cool school. It's just small, but it was good. And then, started that company and started working the ranches out here. And now I'm just, I guess on Instagram, I'm just the cowboy guy.
Love it. Being a cowboy guy in California, everyone's like, huh?
Yeah, no, it's super funny because I live on the beach and I obviously I'm wearing them right now because I'm going to the ranch after this, but I walk around in these things all day and I'm,
And those are real cowboy boots. Those aren't I found them thrifting and I'm trying to look like I'm from the South,
Yeah, no, these are, the way you tell, because anybody can buy cowboy boots, but it's just what they look like, if they're super, super perfectly polished and clean, that means they're probably not using them for anything that cowboys would use them for, I could probably get a little bit newer ones now. They're where my spurs go on, they're almost rubbed all the way through and it's bad. I could probably use new boots. But anyways, so it's kind of funny walking around here because I'll get back from the ranch in my truck and be walking by people, all going to the beach. I'm literally decked out, full ranch gear, ranch shirt, boots, everything. So it's pretty funny.
Are you in Newport or Laguna?
Newport Beach.
Newport. Okay.
Yeah.
I love Newport. So my family's from Orange County.
Cool.
Yeah, and my grandma's in like La Habra area, and they kind of got out of that area and came to Malibu. And I understand, like, and I appreciate that they did because they both, that's all they knew. And we've done a lot of traveling. But now in my, like, in where I am in my life, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like Orange County seems kind of nice. Like, there's what I like about Newport and like those areas is it's like, it's real beach town. It's like flip-flops, barefoot. People are like riding their bikes with their surfboards, like going to the beach, hanging out. I noticed at one point, I don't remember where I was, but somewhere in that area. And we went to a little cafe. And as we were walking back, I was like, there are people out in their yards, like barbecuing. Like, this is so nice, whereas where I live, and first of all, like LA, I could never do because it's just so gated and so what's the word? There's just way too many people, congested. But in California, in Malibu, it's like there is a beach, but that doesn't really happen a lot. Like everyone has gated homes and there's not like people out barbecuing, at least not that you can like see. And there's a lot of like beach traffic and people walking around during the summer, but it's like all tourists. It's not like we live here and we know our neighbors and we like, I don't know, bring them over oranges. I'm like, that sounds cool to like raise kids in that kind of environment. Yeah. So I appreciate that that's how my parents grew up in that kind of world. So I get the feel.
You just got to move down here. It's nice. I'm not gonna lie.
I've definitely thought about it. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the same thing. Great weather. How is like community wise, as far as I feel like Christianity's a little more also like present in Orange County than it is in LA, just from what I've seen.
It definitely is, yeah. We've got a really good church here in Newport called Mariners, and it's like they've got a huge like 20s to 30s group. So anybody that's in your 20s or 30s, they have like a service on Sunday night, and that's literally Sunday service, but it's just 20s to 30s people in there. So like you go to church with just people that are kind of in your same walk of life, which is kind of nice.
That's nice.
It's huge. I mean, there's like, I can't quote anything, but there's, thousands of people that go to that thing. It's crazy. It's so packed. Cool. So that's awesome. There's lots of other things, like there's run clubs everywhere. I'm sure like LA obviously has that too. The community here though is nice. So like I just spent a ton of time in LA, but I feel like it's pretty open and accepting, but it's definitely rooted in more like Christian, a little bit more conservative values, just in Orange County in general, I think. Like LA.
It's really nice. I think just out of all of California, that's rare. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
San Francisco is not like that. LA is not like that. Hollywood's not like that.
Right.
So I think that, and especially when you see like your content and my content, people in the rest of the world are like, this is unusual for a Californian.
Yeah. No, people are hilarious. They actually think that like whenever they'll see some of my clips have like the beach in it, and obviously that's California, but then like whenever they see the ranch, sometimes people are like, oh, that must be in Nashville. And like there's mountains in it. Like there's no mountains in Nashville. And like that landscape is definitely California, but like people just don't believe that, you can be working cows in Southern California, which I will say it is rare. Like there's like, you're not going to find cowboys if you come to Newport. There's like 3 of us, and usually at the ranch. So if you go to bars down here, you're just going to find a bunch of phonies, but because the rest of us are, usually working something.
Yeah. Amazing. So tell me about this beverage company. So did you use your biochem to design beverages with that?
Yeah, no, it wasn't originally the intention with biochemistry. I was trying to go to med school, but I was doing actually some research with some professors. So we're doing research on how IV bags affect people in the ER, and like how we can change the substance in IV bags to be a little bit better for people struggling from acute or long-term alcoholism. And that kind of led me into looking at like, okay, what's in alcoholic products today, and like what other ingredients are we using in them? Because seltzers were just kind of taking off back then, and how can we make it healthier for people? Because like, like you're not going to get people just to stop drinking entirely. I think for the most part, people are going to do it anyway. So how do we make it the least bad for them was our goal, at least. So I kind of dove into that, found out there's a lot of ingredients that make it harder on your body to digest alcohol. So I started using some of the biochemistry background to work around like, okay, break down the sugar, alcohol, and this ingredient, that ingredient, which ones actually are worse for you, and then taking those out and replacing them with something that is more digestible and better for your gut and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we became the first company to ever organically can tequila, so that was a huge deal. And honestly, genuinely make a better for you product in that category. So it was kind of a crazy journey, but definitely glad I did it.
Yeah. Is it, so where can we buy it so that everybody knows? I want to go try this.
Yeah, in California, I mean, any grocery store, just about everything from, Rouse to any Whole Foods to Bristol Farms to Albertsons, Vons, Pavilions. Yeah, just about any grocery store in California. And then the rest of the country, most Kroger's. I think we're in about 12 states right now.
Okay. That's
So
incredible.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's been a long, hard journey, but yeah, it's cool.
But like, what a story. It makes me think of like Ben Affleck and his like roommate that started making movies in college. And it just was like, now we're doing this as a career. Like, that is really cool.
Yeah.
Especially something that is healthier. Because I mean, so my business partner is sober. It's funny because we actually had someone on the pod yesterday that is the sober life side of things, and they're going on that journey, and I love that. But I'm on the all about trying to do this balance. There's also people that we work with that are clients that are like, I don't want to never drink again, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about how to drink appropriately. What does that look like? Because for me, especially because I appreciate being able to talk to someone that grew up in the church. That's kind of rare for me also, being in LA. Like, I will find and meet people that are like, have found Christ recently, which is super cool. I keep talking about the fact that like 20% of or Christianity has gone up by 20%. And I feel like because of COVID and because of things getting so rough, people are just like, okay, there's got to be more. But because of that, I rarely talk to people that grew up in the church. And so my story is like so different because like the first time I like asked Jesus into my heart, I was 3, like, and then like you said, it's around college or around high school that you really are like, okay, wait, am I going to make this mine? And I had this whole little like, I'm going to go agnostic really because I just didn't want to obey the rules. And my parents had me in like every church service and youth camp and blah, blah, blah possible. And so then I was kind of like, okay, I want to find this for me. But yeah, that all being said, my journey with alcohol and has like partying and all of that has been very different because the first part of my life, I would just not touch it. I just was like, alcohol, bad. No sex till marriage, period. It was just that was my identity. So then after like college I was like 22, 23 was the first time I had a drink. And then I had to start figuring out like, what does this look like? I don't know what my limit is. I hated it. I was like, this is disgusting. No one in my family on either side drinks at all, ever. I've never seen it, never been around it, never been exposed to it. So I didn't know what that looked like a healthy relationship with alcohol. So anyways, I think it's really cool that, and I like, there's so many brands out there that you will like, especially at my age, I'm like, I will not touch something, especially like cheap tequila. I'll be down for a week. One drink, like your body just stops being able to process it, Yeah. So what is it called? So we know, and I can tag it in the
Havana. It was just drink Havana. But yeah, it's super interesting though. You brought up a good point. So like, for example, I think I saw there's some clip of an interview with John Mayer going around where he was like, oh, like, what do you want to, like, what's it like living sober? And he's like, oh, if you want to know like what you're actually, like your full potential is, like, then you have to live sober. And I thought it was interesting because like I actually just, up until about a month ago, I had gone about 7 months without drinking anything and had a drop of alcohol in 7 months.
Yeah.
And I don't drink a lot at all, period. Like before that 7 months, I maybe had maybe a drink, like we're talking like maybe two Havanas every 2 weeks. Like that was it, you know.
So
So
a
nothing really
super
crazy.
healthy relationship with alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, super healthy. And honestly, like there's no difference. If you have a good relationship with alcohol, if you're not drinking, like John Mayer was probably drinking every single day. So yeah, of course he's gonna have this dramatic, life changing experience when he went sober. But if you're going out like one night a week, maybe even like one night every 2 weeks, one night every 3 weeks, and like drinking, more than one drink, only one night, every 2 weeks, you're not gonna feel any different when you fully go sober. It's not gonna change your life because it's just not that different, honestly. Like the 7 months were awesome. Like, I mean, I wasn't even trying. I just accidentally kind of did it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, if you already have a healthy relationship with it, like going full, sober it's not going to change anything for you physiologically really either. You just have to have more than that to really do damage. So yeah, I think it's great. Like sober is great. Drinking's great, but if you are going to drink, definitely doing it in a healthy way and in a good amount. And that's why like our whole thing is mindful, healthy drinking. So we're 4.5%. So you can, drink a couple of them and still feel like you're hanging out with people and being normal, but you're not getting overly intoxicated. So that's kind of the big thing for us, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's biblical too, right? Is it says
Yeah,
like not to get drunk. So
exactly.
I love that. How cool. Yeah, it's interesting and I agree, especially so I'm doing a check-in right now. I try to do like check-ins. I just go a month here and there just without drinking. And the last time I did it, I set out for a month and it ended up being 3 because it was just like, yeah. So I think that that's important, but I definitely know like there's been times where I was like, whoa, this is getting a little too regular, and especially because you build a tolerance. So I think and it's just like, what's really interesting too is when you do have a healthy relationship with alcohol, I notice like I've only been drinking for so long. I mean, it's been about a decade now, but the first half of my life, that's the other thing is I think it's different when you grew up not drinking, right? Because for me, like that is my normal. So going back to that isn't very jarring or like unusual. It just actually makes me feel more like normal. But I noticed in like one of the times where I was going through, at one point I went like 6 months and I don't remember it was that time or the last time when it was 3, but I was like, oh man, I'm still emotional and stuff. Where it was like, this has nothing to do with alcohol. This is me. Like, so, but that's beautiful when you recognize like, and if you are someone that has that too much, I encourage you to like take that away and strip down and see what's really happening. Because what can happen is when you have alcohol all the time, you're not noticing that like some of these things are just your emotions that you need to deal with. And I mean, you slap alcohol on top of them, then you're not coping with them. But boy, we're wild as humans. I've also had days when I woke up and I'm like, I feel really like either drunk or hungover. And I'm like, nope. It's been weeks. It's just me. I would go to college parties and be the DD because I didn't drink, but I still wanted to like be out with my friends sometimes. And I went to like a Christian school with like 10 people, right? There was like one party on all of campus that was like once a week, and I went to Gordon in Boston and I would go and be the DD for my friends that did drink. And I just remember like one time someone came up and was like, make sure she gets home okay. And they're like, she's sober. It's just a personality thing, So, and I think that's a lot of the time too why our culture leans into alcohol because they want to just be comfortable to talk to people more and they're not, but then you get a drink in you and it's a little social lubricant. But yeah, I think, this journey and I've seen, our culture is so turning back to this health again, back to Instagram. Like it's all over this healthy lifestyle and organics. And now I'm seeing don't use sunscreen. Like just, it's like everyone is trying to just be as healthy as possible and do this dance and find, you know, what's real fulfillment. What does that really look like? You know, and the core of all of it, obviously, like you and I know, is Jesus. And there's a lot of different ways to make us feel like we're being healthier or this or that. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you just have him at the center of everything, everything else kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
But it's a dance, and it's a lot of back and forth. And I do see a lot of people too that are coming, like, are new to their faith, and they're like gung ho and they're all for it. And I kind of sometimes sit back and I'm like, buckle up, you know, you're at the beginning of this journey, and the Satan comes calling, especially when he sees you're doing well. And it's like those moments, sometimes it's, you get tempted by things that don't seem like they'll be tempting or distracting, or, you know, a lot of I talk on my channel about how I went through 2 really bad relationships that got pretty abusive. And you know, they were Christians. They were very, very Christian men, and they were talking about the Bible, waking up, reading the Bible, like, but the devil will sneak on in there however he can, you know? And so what would you say, being especially in this culture? So 2 things. So my channel is a dating channel. So how has your experience been dating in, well, first I'd love to hear California versus Nashville. That's got to be interesting. And then for your walk with Christ, like, what does that look like, especially being in California? How do you stay in that space and stay grounded in him amongst this like culture? Like, what are some tools you use on like daily, weekly, monthly?
Yeah, totally. I guess the first question, so dating in general. Yeah, I mean, I've had a really good experience so far. I mean, obviously, like, you know, you run into people that have their own demons or things that they're working through or problems. And then you also have ours as well, right? Like everybody brings 2 things into a relationship. And I think just the best thing with dating, like I've realized, is that the better you get at focusing in on what you can do better, the better off you'll be. And so one thing what I've kind of implemented is like, look, I'm going to be me. I'm going to show up as me and keep getting better no matter what the other side of the table is doing. So like if they're going down and getting worse and worse and worse, I'm not going to play on their level, right? So I'm not going to stoop down to it. I'm not going to, you know, be like, oh, well, they did this, so now I'm allowed to go do this. You know, they were rude to me, so now I can go talk to whoever I want at the bar. Like, don't do that. Don't ever sacrifice your own standard for yourself because somebody else isn't living up to the standard that you want. That's the biggest thing that's number one, right? Because then you'll become somebody that you're not. And that's the worst thing that can happen. So, that's a huge piece of it. And then if they are, you know, like you said, like you had people that weren't respectful of you and took advantage of you maybe a little bit. So in those instances, it's like, well, I can't just stop loving them. You know, that's kind of tough. So what do you do? And so what I've kind of practiced is like, look, you know, I'm not necessarily going to stop loving you, but your access to me is going to be limited if you're going to use it in this manner, right? Like if you're going to be abusive, if you're going to be disrespectful in public, if you're going to do that, like, then we're not going to do certain things, you know, until, you know, you can show me that you're not going to do that anymore. You know, like if somebody is, let's just use the disrespectful in public. If you're being overly disrespectful in public, like, okay, we're not going to go on a date in public until like we can work on this. Your access to me is going to be limited. And obviously if that's the case, you probably should be dating them anyways. And so maybe you should work on that, but I do like giving people second chances. So maybe a little bit of, you know, give and take there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Nashville versus California. I think the biggest difference is that, you know, it's all great. Like, I think it's all wonderful. Like, there's nothing wrong growing up any certain way. I would say the biggest thing that I've seen is that Nashville. So the people that live in Nashville are mostly girls and guys that grew up in rural or southern communities. So like if you grew up in like, you know, rural Mississippi all the way to North Carolina to Georgia, you name it, Nashville's like the most trendy, cool young person city in the South. So a lot of people don't want to leave the South, but they're like, I want to meet new people, like I want more job opportunity, whatever. So they go to Nashville. You know, California, typically, there are a lot of transplants here. There's not as many as I think there used to be maybe back in the 70s. I think it's becoming less and less. But what I experienced in California, mostly in the dating scene, is girls that grew up here, and typically that means that they came from a wealthier lifestyle, and that's totally fine, right? If you're a good steward of it, right? And some people can be, some people aren't. Sometimes it's a struggle for people. So I'd say the biggest difference is there's two things. Nashville, you get more down to earth people because it's just probably how they grew up. They weren't growing up with Lamborghinis driving by them every 2 seconds like you have in Newport. You know, their mom maybe wasn't rocking 3 different Chanel bags throughout the day, right? So it's just it's a different view of materialism. And then the other thing too, though, is Nashville is a very big going out place. So you have a lot of people that are deep into like going out every night on Broadway. So you got to be careful of that. It's give and take. You can't pigeonhole any group of people into one specific category. I've met great down to earth people in California, great down to earth girls in California too, So it's both, but I'd say just typically there's a lot more money in California. People that grew up here were raised typically, if you're along the coastline, in a lot wealthier lifestyle. And if you're not very disciplined, if your parents aren't very disciplined on how they raise you, it definitely does impact kind of how you view things in your early 20s and your early 30s, even, and that kind of stuff too. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely,
it's interesting though.
Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely interesting to see. I mean, because I was in Boston and then I was in Seattle and then I was here, and it's so different everywhere. I haven't been anywhere in the middle of the country. I've been, but I haven't lived. My best friend is in South Carolina. And so I see how she behaves. Yeah. And how her dating life is too. She got married pretty early on, right? Like that's a lot more normal. But then over here, there's like not a lot of my friends got married early on. And so it's interesting to see that dynamic. And then you have, Seattle, Washington is like just a whole different, everyone is very closed off. And it's just, there's, like you said, I mean, you can always find those like rare gems, or like just people are different everywhere. But generally, I remember someone saying when I moved to Seattle that people were going to be very cold, which is funny because it's like a cold environment, but they really are. But also once you get to know them, like friends for life, like the type of people that you can call and be like, I'm stuck in Africa. And they're like, I'm on my way, so.
Did you live up in Seattle?
I did.
Cool. Heck yeah.
I went to school there for 1.5 years for college, and then I transferred to Boston. And then last year, it's been about 1.5 years now, maybe two. I went and moved up there for work, and I had a really unique experience for sure. I loved it in some ways. The summers are phenomenal. It stays light until like 11 p.m. So people will be like
crazy.
out on the lake all summer. You look at the clock and you're still like out chilling at the lake and it's 11. It's very, but during the year, it gets dark at like 3. So during the year, it's like kind of depressing. And so it was definitely a shift, but it was like, I had my dog. So we had a routine, and he was a puppy. So I would take him to the park, and he had to run him every single day for an hour, just like back and forth. But so it was like a really unique experience, but it also made me appreciate California in some ways, because as much as it is like, it has its difficulties, like the weather and just having more, I realized, what I had this big epiphany of actually is I was like, okay, there's a lot of people that are frustrating for me growing up in California. It's been really tough, like being around all this wealth, all the money, all the industry, all the like just empty, like this stereotype is kind of like, in New York, they'll just be like, I hate you, right to your face. You know what I mean? We're in California, like, I love you, and then stab you in the back. Like that stereotype is pretty on point. So I just had so many friends, especially because then I at one point was in like a show and had all these friends that I realized like just did not care about me at all as a person. Definitely wasn't talking about faith with them, this and that. And even some of them were like Christians, but like that was not what was really going on. You know what I mean? And so I got kind of like tired of that. And went to Seattle and just kind of wanted this like boot camp for myself, like a fresh start, like just really like focus on myself and like, what do I want and how do I want the Lord to use me? And um, in that space, I ended up having like a few solid friends, but I wasn't like, I was going to church, but I wasn't like making a lot of friends at church either. It was a very like, so actually it's the same church as I have here, which is called Church Home, Judah Smith. I don't know if you've heard of it, but like it's very,
Yeah.
yeah, but their church there is pretty small. So like I would go every Sunday, but I wouldn't really like meet people and I was going alone. And so I had then finally I joined actually a woman's Bible study. And I remember it was like such an eye-opening experience for me because I was like, these girls are going to judge me. Like they probably have their lives like all together and are very like type A. I don't know why I just had this, which is so funny. Like growing up in the church, I'm like, why am I thinking this way? But they ended up being just phenomenal group of girls and really got tied in there. And I do miss them. But the experience as a whole, I realized that like, even though in California, there's like thousands of people that don't actually care about me, that are just like either trying to use me or get something out of me or don't, this, or just happen to be friends of convenience. But I was like, but there's also at least 100 really solid, incredible people in California. And I was like, so in the end of the day, like that's still worth it. And so I came back just with new eyes and new appreciation, and realized and started actually like writing down a list of all these women that I knew already that like I grew up with or I met in church, and like that you just kind of, the hustle and bustle of LA, you get busy and don't realize like those girls are still there for me to like dive into and pour into and bond with. And so now I have this like just incredible group of female friends that is just like, the type of girls that like are praying with me and for me. And we wake up and do Bible study together. Like right after this, my friend's like, can we do Bible time after your call? And I'm like, like it's incredible. But it takes, being, first of all, having your eye open to being really intentional about the friendships that you have, and are they iron sharpening iron, or are they just busy friends that you're like, whatever. It's the thing is too, is like in LA, what I tell people a lot is it's like, it's not necessarily always just like so black and white as like, oh, the partying and club friends. Like obviously, yeah, I mean, in my 20s, I was like, these aren't really friends. But then you get to the point where you're like, there's even like just empty like lunches and this and busyness, that it's like, what is this really doing to help me fulfill my purpose and like
Yeah.
tap into like, what does God want me to do, and how am I using every single second or minute of my day to really become who he made me to be. And I think when you change that perspective, it really helps to like simplify where you spend your time, and less is definitely more. That's for sure.
Yeah. I am kind of, I'm probably too far in the other direction, but do not. I do not go to a lot of things like when it comes to social outings and stuff, because it's just like there's so many other things I could do that are going to be better for my future and my future family and the next person I date, and like all that kind of stuff. It's like, do I really want to spend 3 hours just like BSing at brunch? It's like, for what?
Yeah.
You're going to get nothing out of it other than like, okay, you get to see a couple of your friends that you could go
Yeah.
see in a different light, where you're getting, I don't know, a workout done, or like you said, like Bible study time, like plenty of other ways to have, camaraderie and stuff without wasting your whole day doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like hardcore in that direction. I rarely, if you guys see me out at a social function, it's rare, very rare.
I love that. I love that. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's just there are so many other like things to do, and you get to that point where you appreciate, as I started getting to the point where I would start getting like stressed if I was out at something, because I was like, I have so much to do right now that like,
Totally.
you know, I think especially for you, like having started a business, right, so young. So you had this like pressure on you, like where you can't just go out and just do nothing because you're like, there's stuff that needs to get done if this beverage company is going to work. If the ranches, I'm sure there's a million things that need to be done at all of the ranches. So when you have that in your mind, and I think that that goes back to like purpose, you know, but when you don't have purpose, when you don't spend time to figure out like, what am I here for? It is easy and maybe even easier to just go out and keep busy because you don't want to think about it because it's kind of stressful. So it's definitely like a fine line in a dance, but I encourage people to really dig into what is your why, what is your purpose, and then everything else can like flow from that. But it takes intentionality for sure to figure that
Absolutely.
out.
Absolutely. It definitely does.
There was something else I was going to say. I forgot what it was. Do you have any other like little bits of advice?
Bits of advice? Yeah. Well, tell me, because I know a little bit about you. I know you have clients and stuff and you're helping in some way, but and it's towards dating. So is it mostly guys, girls? Because I could definitely toss in maybe some chunks of advice I've learned in my, I'm not an expert on anything by any means, but I
Yeah,
have had experiences. So, yeah, what would be the most helpful for, I think, maybe people working with and stuff, or like, who are the people you're working with? So I could maybe give something.
100%. So actually, funny enough, I set out to work with women. That was because I was working, or because I was in two back-to-back relationships. Because that's what happens, right? If you don't heal, you keep finding the same person in different bodies. So I
100%.
did that twice, and then I was like, nope. And I literally fled. I went to Connecticut and did not allow myself to I was during COVID. I didn't leave the house. I lived with my best friend, also an incredible Christian woman, and I didn't have a car. I worked from home and I literally did not leave the house. I was like, no talking to boys. Like, it didn't matter if it was a friend. I was like, no boys. Like, zero. I need to heal, pour into myself, and had just this incredible transformation. Came back. I was in a healthy relationship for 2 years. That didn't work out, but it was very amicable because now when you're in a good place, it's a lot easier to date.
Yeah.
So now that I experienced that, and it took me at least a year being with this new guy to be like, are you going to get mad? Like every day I was like, oh, and it just never came. And I was like, oh, this is nice. So at the end, I've been now single for 3 years and I do music. So I pushed my socials a lot. And I kind of started to be like, so I did social media I went to Seattle and did kind of the same thing. Like I was saying, like I didn't go out. I didn't leave the house. I was just very I need to focus. And I was doing social media for a construction company. So that was a whole different world for me to see. And I loved it. I kind of really loved seeing the blue collar, these young boys that were just married and going to work and doing their things. And I was like, I respect this. It was a really cool thing for me to experience. And then I was just got this feeling though in my gut that I'm like, God wants to use me for more than just doing other people's social media. I want to do something with my page. And so then I started kind of throwing the net out and kind of seeing how can I add value the most, and taking polls and being like, do I do fitness? Do I do this? Do I do that? And 9 times out of 10, people were like, we want love advice, dating advice, love advice, dating advice, because I would share about that stuff because I went through it. And then, like I said, I ended up being like, okay, I'm going to help women break out of that cycle and see that they can be in health, because that's something I actually did and I know I can help. Funny enough, the DMs started pouring in with guys, but not because they were hitting on me, because they were like, oh my gosh, I resonate with this. Oh my gosh, I felt that. I don't feel respected. I don't feel heard. How do I A, B, and C? And I was like, this is wild, especially because at that point, I still had so much hurt and anger towards men because men had hurt me so badly. And I was still kind of healing through that. Like I said, I had that one healthy relationship and I have a great relationship with my dad. So I'm like, I know good men exist, but I was still a little bruised. And so now to answer your question, most of my clients are men that are looking to be, respected and loved and cherished in their relationship. And I end up finding that that's just not talked about a lot on social media. We are pretty quick to talk about women needing to be respected, which I love. but there's not a lot of, especially female influencers, talking about how to treat men correctly. So that's kind of the space that I'm in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. That's really cool. You found yourself in that niche. That's a very much a needed thing. Props to you for doing the Lord's work there. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess like to wrap it up, I think one thing I could speak to that community. That's actually like when I started posting reels. That was like I don't know 7, 8 months ago, and I had no intention on following in a certain. I was like, I'm just going to post what I care about, and wherever the algorithm wants to take that, so be it. Whatever. But yeah, no, for guys, I mean, I think the biggest thing when it comes to am I being treated the way I want to, etc., is this relationship going the direction I want it to be? Kind of like what I said earlier is like I think what happens a lot is you meet somebody and they maybe let you down, right? And they don't give you that respect or admiration for something you did for them or whatever. And it makes you a little bit jaded, and maybe you don't, the next day you're not as loving, or you don't sacrifice the same way you did. Yeah. I think the biggest thing I could say, and I kind of said this earlier, but like the best thing you can do is not let it change who you are and keep showing up just as you are, because there will be times, there will be weeks where she could be the right person for you. And maybe she messed up that one time and maybe she needs a week, of continual pursuit, or maybe a month, it just depends on what your threshold is. Obviously at a certain point, keep being yourself. And if they don't rise to your standard, then you need to look, for greener grass. Right? Don't stop watering your own grass and then start looking for greener grass. I think that's what a lot of guys do, because they're like, oh, this was bad. Like she did X, Y, and Z. I don't feel good about it. And now I'm kind of like jaded, or I don't trust her. So now I'm going to stop watering my own grass. I'm going to stop putting my effort into it. And then she gets worse. It's like, no shit, she got worse. No crap, sorry. She got worse. Like you stop watering your grass, of course it's going to die, right? So I think like that's the biggest thing is like, don't ever not be you. Don't ever like lower your standards just because she did for a minute, or vice versa. For girls, don't ever lower your standards just because he wasn't, perfect. Like keep showing up as an amazing person, and time will tell, like if they never show up after, maybe months of pursuing them like that, then obviously you should move on. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned. And like, I think one of the most important things for guys too, because sometimes women could use that, that persistent pursuit, even when they're not giving it back, just for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But obviously like got to draw a line at some point. Cause I definitely have seen and heard about couples where like the guy never drew a line, like never had boundaries. And, now they're just a shell of themselves and they're married to the wrong person and all that kind of stuff. So, have to have your boundaries set at some point. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is a fine line, but I think you're right. And that's great advice, because it's like, you just don't do it right away. Don't just give up right away. Give it your best. And I think, have a time limit. I'm very clear with some of my clients. I'm like, I need you to make a cutoff.
Yeah.
If you don't see her, turn around. And there's definitely, that's great advice too, is I've felt that at times where I'm like, I've pulled back or just stopped caring because I was hurt and I was wanting him to pursue me again or show that he cared. And then I would have come right on my shell if I saw that, but then because I pull back, he pulls back, and then the rest is history. So yeah, I think that's great advice. And then at the end of the day, you can walk away knowing, I did my best, and you can lay your head on your pillow at night, but do have a cutoff, guys.
That's really good advice. I've been in a relationship before where I didn't necessarily have that cutoff, and I kept thinking, oh, well, if I keep trying, I could fix her problems and save her. And it was, a total lost cause. So you're 100% right about you got to have boundaries too.
Kicks in.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I don't want to take the rest of your day. I know you have like ranches and businesses to do. But thank you guys for listening. And I'm going to tag Brad's Instagram in the caption here. Have a great day.
Awesome. See ya.